Hi, I'm Jeff Helmuth of the Wisconsin DNR's Water Use section with an overview of the Central Sands Lake Study. We started the study in 2018 in collaboration with the Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the University of Wisconsin. In this presentation, I'll touch on the data collection, groundwater flow modeling, and lake characterization parts of the study. For more detail, I encourage you to stick around for Meg and Mike's presentations. Meg will talk about the development of the regional groundwater flow model used in our study, and Mike will look at the lake groundwater interactions that we saw in the study lakes. The Central Sands Lake Study is required of DNR by 2017 Wisconsin Act 10 and is designed to look at causes of lake level declines at Long, Plainfield, and Pleasant Lakes in Waushara County. The study came about because the water levels at those lakes and others like them can be quite variable. The two pictures on the slide are from the same position at Long Lake. You can see that in 2009, the water level was much lower than in 2019. Either extreme can affect plant and animal habitat and human uses of the lake. All three of the study lakes are in western Waushara County, in the heart of the Central Sands region. This region is defined by the thick sand and gravel deposits overlying bedrock. The three study lakes are all seepage lakes, meaning they have no surface water inlets or outlets, and so are closely tied to groundwater. They are also located near the watershed divide, high in the landscape and far from major rivers. We know that there are at least two primary causes of groundwater and seepage lake level changes in the Central Sands. One is that the weather and climate vary considerably from place to place, from month to month, and from year to year in Wisconsin. Pumping high-capacity wells for agricultural irrigation is also suspected to cause lake level declines. To complicate matters, irrigation occurs to a greater extent when rainfall is less, so it can exacerbate the impact of drier weather on water levels. One of the challenges of the study is to separate the impacts of pumping from those from weather and climate variability. These figures illustrate the variability of precipitation. On the left is a map of part of the Central Sands with the total amount of annual precipitation in 2011 indicated by color. Even within this relatively small area, precipitation varied by about 6 inches. To the right, you see how precipitation varies from month to month in 2011 in this same area, ranging from 1.3 to 8.5 inches in some places. Precipitation is proving to be a strong driver of groundwater levels in the Central Sands. Separating the impacts of pumping from the impacts of weather variability requires the best data available and modeling expertise. Groundwater pumping by high-capacity wells is a growing concern because it has increased substantially over time, particularly in the Central Sands region. The next few slides show how the different types, numbers, and sizes of high-capacity wells have changed over the last 60 years. In the Central Sands, the biggest change has been the number of dark green circles, which represent agricultural irrigation wells. The first slide shows that in 1960, there were a few small clusters of irrigation wells in the central part of the state. By 1970, irrigation spread throughout much of Portage, eastern Adams, and western Waushara counties. And by 1980, there was an even larger increase in the Central Sands, as well as in Langlade County and the west central part of the state. By 1990, you can see that irrigation had grown substantially with moderate growth in other types of wells. And that trend continued through 2000, 2010, and to our last map from 2019. This series captures a major expansion of irrigated agriculture, particularly in the Central Sands region of the state. Let's take a closer look at the density of wells near some of the study lakes. Here we see the high-capacity wells in the Plainfield area in northwest Waushara County. Nearly all of these wells are irrigation wells. Note the wells are blue circles and that center pivot irrigation is readily apparent in the aerial photo. Zooming in and overlaying 1 mile and 2 mile radii centered on Plainfield Lake, you get an idea of how the potential impacts of pumping could add up. There are 3 wells within a mile and 28 within 2 miles. When pumping, each well lowers the water table in a drawdown cone centered on the well. Overlap of the drawdown cones is additive and could result in a general lowering of the water table when weather is dry and pumps are on. When new wells are added, their impact adds to any pre-existing impacts. The potential for pumping impacts has been a research topic since the 1960s. Some of the relevant studies are shown here, but these studies are focused on impacts on stream flow. Our study is different in that it is focused on water levels of seepage lakes, and it requires a determination of what constitutes a significant impact on these seepage lakes due to pumping. The Central Sands Lake study came about through legislation in 2017 and requires the DNR to, quote, determine whether existing and potential groundwater withdrawals are causing or are likely to cause a significant reduction of a navigable lake's water level below its average seasonal levels, unquote. It's important to note that significant reduction and average seasonal levels are not specified and must be determined by the study. Our understanding of the groundwater flow system and the lake's responses to lake level changes is built on field data, so data collection has been a large part of the study. The groundwater flow modeling process works together with our lake characterizations to determine levels at which significant impacts occur due to pumping. We are currently determining whether predicted lake impacts are significant. If they are, then special measures may be recommended to prevent or mitigate significant impacts. If special measures are recommended, then we will estimate the economic impacts of those special measures, and a final report will be submitted to the legislature by June 3rd. Field data collection was the primary focus for the first 2 years of the study. To support the groundwater flow modeling, the Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey led a comprehensive and targeted data collection effort to characterize the geological and hydrological setting. DNR led the field effort to characterize resources in the 3 lakes and nearby land uses to support the determination of impacts, and compiled pumping data provided by high-capacity well owners. The U.S. Geological Survey has been instrumental in providing lake level and stream flow data. University of Wisconsin scientists assisted in data interpretation, and the Wisconsin potato and vegetable growers supported the collection of evapotranspiration data. Here's a map of the Central Sands region again, this time with the area included in the groundwater flow model outlined in blue. The model requires boundaries where water levels are known, so we are using large rivers, the Wisconsin to the west and the Tomorrow-Wapaka Fox system to the east. This makes the model area very large, but the need for accuracy and therefore field data decreases with distance from the study lakes. Lastly, note that the 3 study lakes are all located near the watershed divide. This last point is important because water levels tend to vary much more at this position in the landscape. I mentioned earlier that the study lakes are seepage lakes and therefore have water levels that are closely tied to groundwater levels. This slide shows why water levels change more near the watershed divide. This is an east-west cross-sectional view of the study area. The land surface is in blue, the water table in red. Large water bodies like the Wisconsin River to the west and the Wolf River to the east hold the water table in place, like paperweights, if you will. The water table is a subdued replica of the land surface. In wet conditions, the water table is close to the land surface, like this. In drier conditions, the water table near the major rivers is held at approximately the same level, but drops substantially near the watershed divide where there are no major water features. The study lakes, being close to the divide, are particularly susceptible to changing water level conditions. The geologic and hydrologic data are combined with land use, water use, and climate data to construct and calibrate a groundwater flow model, the primary tool we're using to look at the causes of lake level changes. This model is a transient 3-dimensional model using ModFlow software and state-of-the-art techniques. USGS has been leading the modeling effort with assistance from DNR. Stay tuned for Meg in the next talk. we'll talk about the groundwater flow modeling. To determine whether a lake has been impacted by pumping requires an understanding of the sensitivity of lake resources and the likelihood that lake levels will be outside a range where impacts are not harmful. While the geology, hydrology, water use, land use, and climatic conditions support the understanding of groundwater flow through the modeling process, understanding and characterizing the lake resources help us evaluate the lake ecosystem response to changes in lake levels. The groundwater flow model provides lake levels calculated from various water use, land use, and climate scenarios. In return, the lake characterization process provides lake responses to those lake levels and is used to determine the significance of any impacts by present or future pumping. Here are the project components described earlier, shown on a timeline. The data collection and analysis, characterization of lake resources and responses, and groundwater flow model calibration are completed. Methods were vetted by public comment on a series of virtual presentations last fall. Now we're in the home stretch and determining whether impacts are significant. A decision on whether special measures are needed to prevent or mitigate significant impacts is planned for early April. If we determine that measures are needed, then we'll assess the economic impacts of those measures. And finally, a report will be prepared, publicly reviewed, and submitted to the legislature by June 3rd, 2021. What I've shown here today is mostly conceptual with some preliminary results. There's a lot more detail on our website. Google Central Sands Lake Study, DNR. If you're interested in whether the study lakes are significantly impacted, check back in about a month when we release our decision report. There will be a public comment period before we make our final recommendations to the legislature. That's all I have for today. Thanks for listening.